Hello there friends, Steve here. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the Freeman on the land movement. Maybe a lot of you have heard about the Freeman on the land movement. Or the Freeman on the land concept, really. It's started in the 60s. And the idea is that, in our government legislation, there is it states that all statutes and acts are given the force of law by the consent of the governed. And so the freemen on the land, in situations where they were feeling that they were anyway not getting justice in courts, where they was just not getting justice, that they would find out why the paperwork wasn't working and actually use legal procedure to give themselves legal excuse, to excuse themselves from that particular law. People who want to live freely. It wasn't about being lawless or about not having laws or anything. It was just about the way those laws are enforced arbitrarily upon people, as if they are some kind of serf or slave to the government, some kind of obedient citizen. So the freemen on the land, they found this part in the legislation that acts and statutes are given the force of law by the consent of the governed, and they was then saying, okay, I'll remove consent. I don't give you consent to issue me with a parking ticket or fine me for a misdemeanor. The idea of the freeman on the land wasn't lawlessness. It wasn't, the idea was to follow common law, which is also a little bit of a misnomer, but the idea was common sense is don't hurt anybody, don't steal, don't trespass. Basic human laws. Now, society is complex. But in a way, the freeman on the land, I find that a lot of people started finding videos online and researching, and at the beginning some people just felt in their heart, I'm not getting justice from this government. It's not the kind of world I want to live in. I want to change the world for the better, but I'm powerless, so I need to maybe find a remedy at law so I can find my power to help the people. It was never, for most people, I don't believe that it was about being above the law or just doing what you want. I think it was genuinely this feeling after all these years that we'd just been enslaved to a system beyond our control, beyond, it was like the system has no ears, so it doesn't matter how much you talk and explain your problem, or even give a request, you don't get heard, because it's a paper system. If everything doesn't get put onto paper and administered and stamped and sealed and signed and authenticated, then it doesn't kind of exist in the world of government and power and systems and social, in the social realm, So I think a lot of people wanted to break free from the government, not to break free and run off on their own and look after their own good selves, I think a lot of people wanted to break free to gain power in order to come back into the system and help others to get that power. And that's worked. It has worked. Since people have watched these videos and got inspired to actually read law and realised that a better understanding about the law at least takes away that fear of the situations with the police and bailiffs and courts and all of these situations that we've been indoctrinated since schooling to see people in uniform with some kind of authority instantly. So if a normal person comes up to you on the street, a stranger, and says, "What's your name?" You say, "Well, who are you? Do I know you? And what do you need my name for?" Or you maybe give your first name. "I'm John, who are you?" And you ask questions back. It's very, very normal with a stranger, If a stranger comes to you and says, "Where do you live? What's your date of birth?" You'd say, "Hang on, what do you need this information for?" It's not polite, it's not dignified to just, even with an old friend, some people I don't even know their second names because it's not relevant to our relationship, let alone their date of birth and stuff. But then when we're confronted with like anybody in uniform, especially of our own national like service thing, police, we suddenly become overwhelmed and switch into this obedience mode. What is your name? And then you have to give a name. And so, people lie and give a false name as a kind of, a reaction, because they don't know that you can just treat the other person with dignity like you would a stranger. Why would you want my name? If somebody asks for my name and there's a good reason to give that name, then I'll give it. It's not a secret. My name is not a secret. But if somebody doesn't know my name and they're asking for it, then it means one of two things. They're either trying to get me to prove something, or they're trying to create joinder, You know what I mean? After a little bit of a chit-chat with somebody might say, oh, what you called, But with this whole uniform thing, we've become very much subservient to legislation, to paperwork. Half the people enforce the paperwork and are obedient to it, and it means everything. I'm just doing my job. I won't get the paper money if I don't follow the paper rules, sort of thing. Now, I'm not being condescending. I know it sounds condescending, but the structure of paper and money and law, it's kind of a framework that goes over reality. And there's a lot of things you can't really explain, like intention, actions and performances. These types of things, they have to be written like in almost like a pantomime script. And that's why legalese and legal language seems so strange. It's not so sinister. It's just a system that's been, it's just very far away from our own understandings. But yeah, a lot of people saw then these YouTube videos about like Freeman on the land and the idea you can just remove consent, which isn't true. These things I was looking at back then, and I'm thinking to myself, well, it all sounds too good to be true. And it sounds like a little bit of wishful thinking, but in my heart I knew there was something right about a man having his or her rights, about man's rights, about human rights, about dignity, and things that seem to be missing in our court systems right now. There seems to be injustice happening. There's, corporations are gaining power, they're buying lawyers. The little people have got no chance. So of course we take on some research, find out some solutions, try them out at the end of our tether. It's like the final solution before they take away our homes and our property and throw us in prison, separate us from our families, and destroy our reputations and livelihoods. But that's okay as long as it's written down on paper. And nobody puts their signature to those bits of paper. These days you cannot find a court judge who's signed a lot of things and stuff, because a lot of the things have just been done in a commercial realm, and we're getting pulled into this commercial realm when we're actually, there's two worlds. There's the commercial world and there's the criminal world. When it comes to law, there's criminal law and there's commercial law or contract law. Yeah, I'm sort of waffling on, but I mean, these are a lot of the things that the Freeman on the land and these other types of movements we're talking about. And a lot of people saw them on YouTube, got desperate, tried out some of the procedures. But obviously when you got a bailiff knocking at your door, the fear comes and the stress comes, and you start to become defensive and saying a lot of things. And in a lot of situations, it's about remaining in honour, to stay in honour, and to prove your own competence. And I think if you lose those two, then you kind of you're submitting to the debate, because it's not really a dispute, it's just a debate. It is just somebody doing their job most of the times, and they have got boxes to tick in, and usually somewhere there's some kind of remedy. And if there isn't remedy, then we've got to seek that remedy. But a lot of things have got off the rails. Like people have seen these videos and they're completely convinced about certain legal aspects and think that, if you don't consent to the government, then the laws don't apply to you. And that the law is the law because the government says so. It's not. Now, I think the consent of the government is you are the product of consent. You know, your parents consented. And so you are naturalised in a place where your parents consented to you, then you are the product of consent. You know, and trying to say that you didn't consent is like saying you didn't give birth to yourself. That's, you know, that's true. But you are the product of consent, so law's a little bit more complicated than just using it against itself. It's protected against things like that. And personally, I've been watching a lot of these videos over the years, and I've seen a lot of big presentations, people saying things about trust law and how we are the owners of everything and not the beneficiaries. You know, we're not the trustees, but we are the beneficiaries. And then other ones about sovereignty, how you can claim your own sovereignty and then become your own nation. And a lot of these ideas are fantastic concepts to think about, and they really lead you down paths of wisdom, but each time you'll notice that there's a kind of a little joke at the end, and it's like true, but it's not quite like you thought it was. Like being a king or something, you know, it's like you think, oh, I'd like to be a king, then I'd have loads of gold and silver and servants. And that is not the primary concept behind kingship in law. You know, there's an underlying concept about divine law in law. You know, we can all say that we all know common sense and we all know about being good and bad and natural, but when we have to discuss these things between nations, between peoples, between friends and enemies in different languages, then we need some communication device called law, called language. Yeah, I'm just waffling on anyway, so I'll end it there. I don't know if I said anything in this video really of relevance, but there's a reason I made this video, and I'll put it in the next video. Maybe, if I get that far. Okay then, see you later.